Hello. This is Pixie. What am I thinking about today? Okay, I've been thinking recently about this stuff. There was stuff to do with a group called Judas and Jeremy Corbyn, and how this group are anti-Semitic. Anti-Semitism, it doesn't really make any sense anyway. And also, why have they got something special? Everyone else is called a phobia, like Islamophobia, like you're scared of the word of Islam. So it's probably Israelphobia or something. They're probably going to end up mixing up different things about it. But quickly, the media were there to on the attack, and this group is anti-Semitic and all these other stuff. They think that Israel's is a cesspool. Well, that's because not all people who have a Jewish faith. Now, this is they refer to Jewish, and they just put this label, and it could be anything really. In the same way, you can say someone's a Muslim, and then doesn't matter what creed or whatever they are, you suddenly categorise them as all being Muslims, all the same sort of race, and that's the problem. The problem is within Jewish society, they've still got their own groups, even if they want to become under one umbrella, and maybe they don't. That's the problem. Not everybody agrees with stuff that's happened in Palestine, the way Israel came around. America was like the promised land, really, and I think for them it is Israel, is a part of America. They're better off getting a chunk of America called Israel than what they've done over there, because they're basically slowly pushing off these people off the land and treating them like gypsies. And the poverty in the war doesn't help, and if you're a Palestinian and you cross the line there, you don't just get yourself in trouble, your whole family does. They knock down your home, they kick you out, everything. So it's a bit more extreme at that level. I don't think this Judas are that bad. I'll do a bit of research on them, like I say, see where they're coming from. They're just a different group. And it also reminds me of when the war started, with our World War II, and targeting certain Jewish group. I don't think all the Jews were targeted, maybe particular names, families, because they are just a part of another part of the Cabal, really. They represent a threat. So it's fairly mixed up. I mean, so if a Jew disagrees with another Jew, that's fine. Sorry. Take the carrot. So if a Jew doesn't like another Jew, they're anti-Semitic, even though they fundamentally believe in certain things, or not unless they don't. Not unless they believe that these people are not real Jews, or they have there's a strong fascism there. You can't alienate one group and then claim that the other one's has hate crimes going on, while you're killing Palestinians and causing other issues around, like saying Iran can't have nuclear weapons but we can, and that all the Jews should come back from America and go to Israel. If you do that, you lose your independence. You just got to go where you believe if you are Jewish, listening to this, and these different tribes we come from all connect somewhere, don't they? That's what the idea is. There's 13 tribes of man, and there's black Hebrews as well. So don't use the word Hebrews because it might be a bit more complicated, and Hebrews is Hybrids or hybrids, So they are high brothers. So it's the hood, isn't it? A grouping together. So they're all family, basically. Family, or that may have been genetically altered in some way. Wasn't quite the intentions of this planet, but it still happened anyway. Because in the long term, it all works out, I guess. Otherwise, things don't happen then. And so the history gets hidden. From being openly discussed. It gets injected into cultures though. Like Islam and Christianity have the Israelite and Hebrew information put within them. They both have Moses in their stories. They just talk about the current being somewhere else, you know, the present, or what set up their basically their religion. But it still has to have the doctrine of Israelite doctrine in it, and other doctrine put in there. So it's just a bit of a cheek, really. And I mean, I know what it is. It's one cabal versus another. It's one secret group versus another secret group, and the others are just grouping in. Well, they've been underground for a while, disagreeing, protesting over things, saying stop taking Palestinians' land and all these other things like that. And it was set up by rich people. So the other thing about sending people back to Israel is that the elite ones, they live in America. So they're encouraging people to go there so they can be the masters over here, or wherever. You know, they don't live in America, but the elite cartel. And then they set themselves up with something different. And then what would happen in Israel? Will there be a terrorist attack that the elite can't be involved in because they're not there? And but they'd be outraged over here or in America, and they might have funded it. A bit like the banks funded things in the war. So what was that about? Why pick on particular groups of Jews? Was there certain ones? Was it as bad as they say it was? But the basic information is that that was a major. It was about race, actually. It was racism. It was never about anti-Semitic stuff. It was to do with the fact that you're sort of trying to take over and influence society, and a deep hatred of communism from a Jewish faction. Because it's not. I mean, what happens is that people get programmed to think that communists are Chinese, communists are Russians. They don't think there could be communists Americans or communist Jews. They don't think of these things. It's a bit like Zionism doesn't exist exclusively in one culture. It's actually what happens when people are psychopaths, which is fine if they recognise what they are, and they have certain fantasies and themes that play out in their mind. It's a bit like claiming you're the victim but always being the bully. It doesn't. I mean, you see that at school. It's like, oh, why does everyone pick on me? Because you do nasty stuff to people and they don't appreciate it, and then they have an issue and then they report you, and then you start pretending you're a victim. So how did you learn to be a victim? Because you studied the ones that you tortured, and you thought, if you pretend to cry, you'll get what you want. And things like that. And in the same way that plays out in the media. So they all have the same message and say, oh, this Judas group, this, you know, they're like terrorists, they're like this, they're like that. And then the truth be known is that nobody would have done any research on them or had an interview with them. They may have good reasons for what they say and believe. Maybe they had Palestinian friends and they all got killed, and that kind of set them up, or they know a deeper truth about some of the darker sides of Judaism, and the Babylon connection, and things like Moses and Moses' brother. There was an issue. His way of doing things with he still kept on to his pagan beliefs. And even though he went along with it, he had no long-term plan of changing that. He wanted to have his own school of thinking. I think that's pretty much what it plays out, because the golden bull was burnt up. Moses come down, what the hell are you doing praying to an idol? Didn't I tell you the guys about this? And it was like, well, we're still going to, because it's got power and magic and other stuff involved, and we're mystics, we're going to still do this stuff. We're just not going to do it openly. We're going to do it behind closed doors, and we're going to bet on the stock market on the full moon and do stuff that we kind of indirectly praise things, because that was just the way they were. And like I say, if somebody falls into it as a psychopath, they're not planning to change. They can adapt to confuse people, but they don't plan to change. So the heaven and hell we create in our own, really. So that's just the way we are. So anyway, that's my thoughts on Judas. I'm going to have a look at the Judas, but they're all, I mean, at some levels, they're not as bad as each other, because they might not have a history of killing people. So yeah. Anyway, this is my conclusion so far, and I will speak to you soon.